Well, hello there. I am Mickey B, and it has been a long time. It's always going to be a long time in between videos, but um, I wanted to come tonight to do something different, something that I had thought about doing a long, long time ago. And so tonight, I just finally got the encouragement and the motivation to follow through with it, and that is a bedtime story for adults. So I came across this book many years ago through my job, and it's called Feminist Fairy Tales. And I don't know if this is going to be backwards on the screen, hopefully not. But I take no credit for the stories that I'm about to share with you. But I really enjoyed reading this book. I had no idea how much I would enjoy it. And I thought I would share some of the stories with you. And what I liked a lot about the stories in this book is that they teach young girls that women can be strong and that they aren't always weak and dependent upon men to come and save them. Um, that they're not just caught up, they're not just so vain and worried about their looks, that there's more to a female than just the shallow stuff that a lot of people share or put out there. I mean, women are made of so much more than that. And I had no idea that this was the type of book, but I always liked short stories. It's a book of short stories, and basically, it's retelling all of the traditional fairy tales, like Snow White. Like the one I'm going to start off with is called Snow Night, Night. And this was one of my favorite ones. And so I'm just going to stop talking and jump right into the story. And if it gets too long, I may break it up in a couple of videos because I am on my way to go to bed. It's about a quarter till 11. And I should have been in bed by 10. Then I said 10:30. Then I had the urge to do this, and I can go as late as 12. So we're going to start reading this and see how far I get. And let me know how you like the story. I think it's a really cool story, and it sends a really good message. And I think I need just a little bit more light here. Okay. So here we go. Snow Night. The wicked stepmother is ubiquitous in European fairy tales, whereas any father figure is usually given a good character. Snow White's stepmother seems to have been vilified because A, she resented being less beautiful than Snow White, and B, she practiced witchcraft. One might suspect that female beauty was really a larger issue for men than for women, because male sexual response depends to a considerable degree on visual cues. Placing each fair lady or anything else somewhere on an arbitrary hierarchical scale seems to be a male idea. Women may recognize 1,000 different types of beauty without having to make them compete. As for witchcraft, the last bastion of female spiritual power fell when the church declared its all out war on witches, the name they gave to rural midwives, healers, herbalists, counselors, and village wise women, inheritors of the unraveling cloak of the pre Christian priestess. A queen was also a witch. I'm sorry, a queen who was also a witch would have been a formidable figure, adding political influence to spiritual mana. I don't know what that word is. MANA. Oh, spiritual mama. Is that mama? No, it's MANA. I don't know what a mana is. Anyways, Snow White's stepmother therefore seems to me a protection of male jealousies. As re envisioned in this story, she may seem more true to life. So here is the story. That was just the introduction. And the pictures are very European, but that's what the picture looks like. All right, so here we go. Once upon a time, there was a beautiful princess with skin white as snow and hair black as night. so she was called Snow Night. Her mother died when she was a baby, and her father remarried. Snow White's stepmother was a noted sorceress and also famous for her beauty of a more mature type than that of the young princess. Everyone at court watched with interest as Snow Night grew up to be a charming young woman. Particularly interested was her father's master of the hunt, who was called Lord Hunter. He aspired to improve his rank by marrying a royal princess. Moreover, he found Snow Night exceedingly desirable. Therefore, he made every effort to woo her. He sent her the best flowers plucked from the royal gardens and very bad poems plucked from his own mind. He subjected her to long monologues about his hunting successes. He hovered at her elbow in every procession and tried to fill her dance card with his own name at every grand ball. Snow Night, however, did her best to avoid him. Though he was arrogant and fancied himself a very gallant gentleman, she found his attentions unwelcome. His touch made her shudder. Oof. Lord Hunter was heavy, coarse, and greasy haired. His breath stank, his fingernails were dirty, and his speech unrefined. Snow Night thought him repulsive. If my father tries to make me marry a hideous old toad like Hunter, she confided to her maid, I'll run away. Lord Hunter also tried to make himself agreeable to the queen, hoping to become her confidant. The queen called him her huntsman and tolerated him with good grace. She was amused by his constant flattery and diverted by his gossip. And before long, he came to think of himself as the queen's intimate friend, not knowing that she held a rather different view of the matter. One day, Lord Hunter found Snow Night alone in a remote part of the castle gardens, and he seized the moment. He swept off his hat, bowed and knelt at her feet, bumping down rather heavily, holding up a long-stemmed rosebud as an offering. Lovely princess, he said, hand on heart, allow me to say what I have been yearning to say to you for a long time. You are the only woman I'll ever love. You are my beloved, the lady of my heart. Do you say you will let me court you and perhaps one day marry you? Marry? Cried Snow White, appalled. I'm sorry, cried Snow Night, appalled. I'm not ready to marry, but when I am, I will certainly marry a handsome prince, not an ugly old huntsman. Lord Hunter, you presume far above your station. Surprised in his turn by the vehemence of her rejection, Hunter snatched at her skirt with one hand and clamped her wrists together with the other. You must not talk to me, he exclaimed. You must not so talk to me. You must not talk so to me. Sorry, I'm messing up the story. You must not talk so to me, he exclaimed. I'm a nobleman, princess or not. You're only a young girl with little knowledge of the world. Maybe you should learn a lesson today. Angry and frightened by his boldness, she struggled to free herself. How dare you lay hands on me, she demanded. Let go at once. When he did not, she wrenched a hand free and struck at his face with her fingernails, drawing blood. At this, Lord Hunter quite forgot himself. He wrestled her down to the ground and clawed at her clothes with some dim idea of ravishing her into submission. Snow Night screamed and thrashed in a panic, struck him with her fists, and finally kicked him in the crotch. As he curled up gasping for breath, she sprang to her feet and spat at him. Never, Never come near me again. Do you hear, you repellent monster? She cried. I hate and despise you, and I always will. And she ran away, leaving Lord Hunter feeling that his ambitions and other things were thoroughly ruined. Now, Hunter's desire for the princess was replaced by hostility. He wanted to see her injured, even dead, in recompense for his humiliation. He sulked and brooded and awaited his chance. One evening he found the queen alone in her anteroom consulting her magic mirror, which always told the truth. He sat quietly while she asked the mirror several times. I'm sorry, while she asked the mirror several questions. Then, as she was turning away, he said, I wonder if your majesty has ever asked the mirror who is the fairest in the land. The queen smiled. I know the answer it would give, huntsman. Snow White is the fairest. Doesn't that anger you? No, why should it? Surely your majesty's great beauty has always been fairest in the land. Wouldn't that make the princess a usurper and an upstart? The queen laughed. We all go through cycles, huntsman. The wise expect it. Younger life takes the place of the elder. It's the way of nature. Every mother of children feels it in her bones. To challenge nature is folly. But don't stepmothers always hate their stepdaughters? That must be one of the most ridiculous traditions about women invented by men. A stepmother has every reason to get along with her stepdaughter. Why cause unnecessary strife? In any case, I'm quite fond of Snow White. She's a good-hearted little thing, if a bit slow in her wit. Why would I be so foolish as to mistreat her? But your majesty wouldn't undertake any such thing personally, of course, Hunter said, his obsession having deafened him to her words, which he still believed were dissembling. According to an old story, the royal stepmother sends another to act for her, such as her faithful huntsman. He is the one charged with killing the stepdaughter and bringing back her heart in a jeweled casket. The queen gave him a shrewd glance. You really are mad, she whispered. Huntsman, that is an exceedingly obnoxious idea. Put it out of your head at once. But she saw from his slightly glazed look that the idea had already taken a firm hold on him. And with a sudden chill, she realized that Snow White was in mortal danger. That night, the queen went to her tower room and worked a spell to call a clever raven to her window. When the bird appeared, she sensed it with herbal smoke and said, Fly to the land of the dwarves and tell the queen that I need 7 of her subjects, the ones most learned in techniques of concealment. And then the raven flew off. 3 days later, the queen put on a white wig, a long putty nose, a black cloak, and a black broad-brimmed crone's hat. Thus disguised, accompanied only by her personal maid, she went to the village inn to meet with 7 little men from the land of the dwarves. They sat at a rough wooden table drinking flagons of ale. The queen produced a leather sack from the folds of her cloak and laid it before the leader, who opened it and poured forth a handful of glittering cut stones, sapphires, rubies, emeralds, and diamonds. The dwarves' eyes sparkled like the gems which dwarves love about everything else, which dwarves love above everything else. Magnificent, said the leader. For this we will do anything you ask, short of killing ourselves. I want you to watch the king's master of the hunt, whose picture I show you here, said the queen. I want you also to watch over the Princess Snow White, without letting yourselves be seen. Here is her picture. If she leaves the castle, follow her. If the master of the hunt ever approaches her in such a manner as to do her harm, you are to seize and blind him, carry him back to Dwarfland, and keep him in a perpetual or as a perpetual prisoner. Your queen, who owes me a favor or two, will see to it. We will obey you in every particular, promised the leader of the dwarfs. The queen arose and shook his hand. Then it is agreed, she said. From this moment on, let no one from the castle see you anywhere. She left the inn and returned by dark of night to her own quarters. Less than a week later, all the courtiers except Lord Hunter were gladdened by the news that a fine young prince named Charming was on his way from a neighboring country to woo Snow White in person. The king's huntsman kept to himself, avoiding his usual activities and his friends, who noticed that he was losing weight, seldom smoked, and never smiled anymore. Lord Hunter was obsessed by the demon of vengeance, which his violent nature could express only in violent terms. He never spoke to Snow White, but he watched her always, even going so far as to hide in a cupboard near her chamber for many hours during the night. On the day before Prince Charming was due, Snow White took her lapdog and her maid with a picnic basket out for a greenwood lunch. Lord Hunter seized the opportunity to follow them. No sooner had they settled in a pleasant glade when he sprang from the bushes, grabbed the princess, and trussed her like a chicken, ignoring her shrieks and struggles. Her little dog yapped and snapped at him and received a brutal kick that sent it flying against a tree. Her maid stood frozen with terror until Lord Hunter commanded her to lie down on her face. "No!" screamed Snow White. "Don't stop! Run back to the castle and tell them! Run, you fool!" But the maid was too long accustomed to habits of passivity and obedience. Her knees buckled, she sank down helplessly, and Lord Hunter trussed her too. Then he turned his attentions to the squirming princess. He drew out his long hunting knife and advanced on her, madness gleaming in his eyes. Realizing she was at the mercy of a murderer, she gave herself up for lost. Suddenly, the 7 little men charged from all directions around the glade, disarmed Lord Hunter, and bore him to the ground. 6 of them sat on him, while the 7th untied the princess and her maid. They used the same ropes to bind up Lord Hunter even more tightly than a trussed chicken. The head dwarf then doffed his cap and bowed to Snow White. "This man will never bother your highness again," he said. "We are under orders to return with him to Dwarfland, where he will be imprisoned for the rest of his life." Ignoring Hunter's yell of protest, Snow White said, "Excellent! How can I repay you for saving my life?" "We have already been paid, your highness," said the dwarf, for dwarves are honest folk, "by your lady mother, the queen. With your permission, we will go now." 6 dwarves hoisted the tight-wrapped body of Lord Hunter to their shoulders, for dwarves are strong folk, and marched away after their leader, singing lustily to drown out his snarls and curses. As their noise faded into the distance, Snow White and her maid collected their scattered picnic utensils and their wits. Snow White carefully carried her little dog, whose ribs had been broken, home to a bed in her dressing room where he could rest until he was healed. The next day, Prince Charming arrived on schedule, and he proved to be charming indeed. He and Snow White were delighted with each other. They soon became engaged, and within a year were married in a magnificent ceremony. The queen was matron of honor. Snow White never forgot her stepmother's wise forethought, which had saved her life. Both royal couples, elder and younger, lived happily ever after. And as for Lord Hunter, his reason quite gone, he lived confined for the rest of his life as the dwarf's prisoner. In later years, he sometimes passed the weary hours by writing stories. It is said that he wrote an entirely different version of the story you have just heard. You get it? So he wrote the version that most people are used to, where Snow White was fairer than the queen, and yada, yada, yada. Well, I hope you enjoyed this story time tonight. I enjoyed reading it to you. And now I'm actually ready for bed. So if you like this story, there is a book full of them, and I would love to read more of them to you. In fact, there are, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 15, 20, 20, maybe 30 or so stories in here. And a lot of them are really interesting. Some of them have to do with mermaids and the three little pinks instead of the three little pigs. Cinderella, Cinderhell, Helle. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. Cinderhell, Hella instead of Cinderella. Little White Riding Hood instead of Little Red Riding Hood. The Frog Princess. So it's fun. I enjoy. I've read this book several times, and I'm not one to repeat things, but I would love to share more of these stories, and I may just do them anyways, and just do them. Somebody down the road might find them interesting, but I'm rambling. I'm gonna take my butt to bed. It's only 11:05, so I'm not too far off schedule. And if you like this story time, and you want me to do more, leave me a comment and let me know, and click the like button. And if you're not subscribed to my channel, go ahead and do that as well. And I'll see you in the next video. Have a good night.